Hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome back to we have two more sections in our appendix to read for the archetype definitions. That is the letters V and W. This video should be relatively short because there are not very many for those particular letters. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, let's see. All right. So V and W, starting out with vampire. The vampire is a mythic creature associated with both blood-sucking and eroticism. Vampires require blood, which they get by biting the neck of their victims during a nocturnal visit. The female victim has been portrayed in the paradoxical circumstances of wanting to repel the vampire while at the same time welcoming the erotic nature of the connection. A good example of that is True Blood. If you've not seen the HBO series True Blood, that's a good example. The vampire returns every evening to his source of life until there is no more to be had. The parallels between human lust and vampiric bloodlust are rich. As the vampire satisfies his thirst for blood, his host grows increasingly helpless and submissive, eventually being drained of any capacity for self-protection. Symbolically, this relationship speaks of the power dynamics that frequently drive male-female relationships, in which the male drains the power of the female for his own psychic survival, and once bitten, the female submits even though this will eventually take all her power. In some relationships, of course, the roles can easily become reversed. Another good movie is Once Bitten. It's one of the first movies that Jim Carrey was in, and that's a really great example of the roles being reversed because the woman is the vampire and he's the helpless victim. Beyond the sexual level, we sometimes form psychic attachments to others because we desire their energy, a desire that manifests through a need for approval, a need to have the other take care of our survival, and a fear of being abandoned. What has been defined as a codependent relationship could easily fall under the vampire template. You may find it hard to identify yourself as a vampire, yet it is essential to review this archetype personally. Patterns of behavior such as chronic complaining, overdependency, holding on to a relationship either emotionally or physically long after it is ended, and chronic power struggles are all indicators of vampire patterns. Holding on to someone at the psychic level is as real as holding on at the physical. Interest in the vampire archetype has reemerged through the literary and entertainment fields. It may well be that the archetypal opening of humanity's psyche during these past 5 decades has resurrected the vampire, empowering it with a force on the psychic plane of consciousness that was not engaged prior to this time. Films that make good representations for this archetype pattern: Bela Lugosi in Dracula, Tom Cruise in Interview with the Vampire, one of my favorite movies. Fiction, we have Dracula by Bram Stoker, one of my favorites, The Vampire Chronicles by Anne Rice, and The Vampire, A Tale by John Polidori. Religion and myth. Of course, we had Vlad Tepes, aka Vlad the Impaler. In 15th century Wallachia, or modern Romania, a bloodthirsty count who reportedly impaled and beheaded his enemies. Then we have Langasor, a Malayan vampire, a woman who died in childbirth and now assaults infants and children. Next, we have victim, which is one of the main 4 archetypes. Remember, we have victim, prostitute, saboteur, and there was one other. So there's a lot more about the victim earlier in the book, but we're going to read specifically about it right here. The negative traits of the victim are self-evident. When properly recognized, it can be a tremendous aid in letting us know when we are in danger of letting ourselves be victimized, often through passivity, but also through rash or inappropriate actions. It can also help us to see our own tendency to victimize others for personal gain. In its shadow aspect, the victim shows us that we may like to play the victim at times because of the positive feedback we get in the form of sympathy or pity. Our goal is always to learn how to recognize these inappropriate attitudes in ourselves or others and to act accordingly. Films, we've got Hilary Swank in Boys Don't Cry. That's a really great movie. Jodie Foster in The Accused. Meryl Streep in Sophie's Choice. Oh, that'll tear your heart out. And Glenn Close in Reversal of Fortune. And Sophie's Choice is actually started out as a book, but they're giving the movie portrayal, but you can read the book also. Fiction, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde by Robert L. Stevenson, great book. Misery by Stephen King, another great one. Drama, we have Torch Song Trilogy by Harvey Feinstein or Fierstein. And in Religion and Myth, we have Isaac, the son of Abraham, who God orders Abraham to sacrifice. We have Heracles, seized by Busiris, a mythical king of Egypt, who sacrificed all strangers to the gods to avert famine. And Heracles avoided being victimized by using his great strength to break his chains and slay Busiris. And then we have Virgin, see also monk and nun. This archetype is associated with purity, applied primarily to young girls. The Vestal virgins of ancient Rome lived in service to a goddess and were often severely punished if they lost their virginity. The Virgin Mother of Jesus represents the purity of motherhood, bringing forth the perfect form of male life, a god. Your identification with the Virgin needs to be explored symbolically as a pattern that represents as association with purity as well as the beginning point of creation. To bring forth virgin ideas is as much an aspect of this archetype as is its application to maintaining virginal aspects of Mother Nature, as in virgin forests. The shadow side of the Virgin is the prudish disgust with or fear of genuine sensuality. Resisting sex not to save one's energy for other endeavors, but because it seems inherently repellent, is not a virtue but a denial of an essential aspect of oneself. Celibate monks or nuns ideally learn to channel their sexual energy rather than merely repressing it. Films, Sean Connery in The Medicine Man, Kirsten Dunst in The Virgin Suicides, Jennifer Jason Leigh in Fast Times at Ridgemont High, and Religion and Myth, Parthenos, Greek for virgin, an epithet of the goddess Athena, who was the virgin mother of Erichthonius. Then we have Hestia, which is the Greek, and Vesta, Roman, virgin goddesses of the hearth and by extension, domestic life. Well, they're each the same person, but we have the Greek name and then the Roman. And then we have visionary, dreamer, prophet, seer, see also guide, and alchemist. I think that's our last V. Yeah. And then we only have one W. The visionary archetype lets you imagine possibilities that are beyond the scope of your individual life and that benefit all of society. The visionary brings into view what could be if certain choices are made, or what is inevitable given choices that have already been made. The prophet proclaims a message associated with divine guidance, as in the Hebrew prophets, some of whom also appear in the Quran. The Islam reveres both Jesus and John the Baptist as prophets. Both the visionary and the prophet engage their abilities in behalf of humanity, rather than for personal use. But while many prophets are rejected by the group they were sent to enlighten, visionaries tend to be celebrated for their capacity to read what is just over the horizon. The shadow prophet or visionary manifests as a willingness to sell one's visionary abilities to the highest bidder, or to alter one's vision to make it more acceptable to society, which I personally believe the disciples did after Jesus' death and in recording the Bible. Either because they didn't understand a lot of what he was saying, they did not fully understand his message, or they were too afraid because they thought what happened to him would happen to them. They would be shunned, they would be crucified, they would be executed. But that's a whole other different story. Okay. In extreme cases, tainted visions may lead entire societies into murderous or destructive rampages. Then the destroyer archetype may supersede the visionary, as in the case of Hitler, Stalin, and Mao. Films, we have Eric Ebekwani in Lumumba, Peter Finch in Network, Shadow Aspect. Religion and myth. We have Hebrew prophets Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, and others who often chastised powerful leaders while calling the people's attention to their own failings. Muhammad, the final prophet of Islam, who directed God's message to the Arab people through the Quran. Then we have Baha'u'llah, the 19th century Iranian prophet who found the Baha'i faith, spreading his vision of one universal cause, one common faith. Cassandra, in Greek lore, daughter of the king and queen of Troy, who was given the gift of prophecy by Apollo in an attempt by him to seduce her. Because she refused his advances, he made all her prophecies fall on deaf ears. Then we have, starts with a Z, Zarathustra, prophet and founder of Zoroastrianism. And our last one here, we have warrior, soldier, crime fighter, Amazon, mercenary, soldier of fortune, gunslinger, samurai. The warrior archetype represents physical strength and the ability to protect, defend, and fight for one's rights. Whereas the knight is associated with protecting damsels, the warrior is linked to invincibility and loyalty. Warrior energy is erotic for the male, representing the height of virility and physical power, as well as toughness of will and spirit. To be unbreakable and to fight to the death is a large part of the warrior archetype, which is also associated with the passage from boyhood to manhood. The mercenary and soldier of fortune are variations on the hired killer who sells his power on the open market, often with complete disregard for the buyer's cause. These archetypes are much like the prostitute in that, although they appear negative, they warn us in their favorable aspect when we are in danger of aligning our might with an unjust or purely self-interested cause. The gunslinger and samurai represent a double-edged sword, pun intended. They appeal to our fantasies of independence and the power to defend ourselves and right wrongs, yet they also carry the historic weight of savage, predatory evil. On one side are all the heroic characters portrayed by John Wayne, Gary Cooper, and others, standing up to injustice and holding off the forces of evil single-handedly. The Lone Ranger and the wandering samurai warriors in the films of Akira Kurosawa also epitomize this fiercely independent warrior that the American and Japanese pasts seem to share. And on the other side are all the evil, self-interested killers and thieves who embody our worst nightmares of lawlessness and unchecked male dominance. Somewhere in between are the ambiguous crime fighters and lone wolf gunfighters epitomized by Clint Eastwood, whose heroism is often tinged with anger, vengefulness, and more than a little sadism. The shadow warrior distorts or abandons ethical principles and decency in the name of victory at any cost. What can be a virtue, heroic indifference to risk and pain, becomes contemptible when the indifference is directed not at oneself but at others. The warrior archetype is just as connected to the female psyche as to the male. Women have long been defenders of their families, and the Amazon tribe of warrior women has become legendary because of their ability to engage in fierce battle, even sacrificing part of their female physique to facilitate warfare, their breasts, so that their protection fits better. Loyalty to the family and tribe is among the Amazons' notable characteristics, along with nurturing their young and transmitting lessons of power and self-defense. In today's society, the warrior woman has emerged in her glory once again through women who liberate and protect others, especially women and children who need vocal and financial representation. The concept of the spiritual warrior has been pioneered by Dan Millman in The Peaceful Warrior, the Tibetan Buddhist teacher Chogyam Trungpa, and it's Shambhala, the Sacred Path of the Warrior, Professor Robert Thurman, and others. They direct us to use the classic warrior virtues of heroism, stoicism, and self-sacrifice to conquer the ego and gain control of our inner lives. Films that relate to these archetypes. Gary Cooper in High Noon, John Wayne in The Searchers, Clint Eastwood in Pale Rider and Unforgiven, Mel Gibson in Warrior and Mad Max, Barbra Streisand in The Way We Were, political activist, Shirley MacLaine in Terms of Endearment, fighting for better care of her terminally ill daughter, and Denzel Washington in Glory. He plays a Civil War soldier, and The Seven Samurai. Television, Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Xena the Warrior Princess. Drama, A Soldier's Story by Charles Fuller. Fiction, In Dubious Battle by John Steinbeck. It's about migrant workers. And religion and myth, we have Bhima, the Terrible One, warrior hero of the Mahabharata, known for his great strength, the son of the wind god Vayu and brother of Arjuna. He became a Hindu warrior god. Then we have Oya, woman warrior of Yoruba myth, goddess of fire, wind, thunder, and the river Niger. And Darta, a Celtic Gaelic warrior and fertility goddess, patron of the Vacanti. Then we have Popocatépetl, Aztec warrior who, with his consort, was transformed by the gods into a mountain after they both died of grief for each other. And then Brunhilde, female warrior, one of the Valkyries in the German epic Nibelungenlied. And then we have Alyosha Popovich, an epic hero and mighty warrior of Russian folklore, and Durga, warrior manifestation of the Hindu mother goddess. All right. So that right there completes our entire appendix. I'm just seeing if there's anything else. Yeah, that's it. And now we are finished, and you have all of the information that you need to peruse at your leisure. And we will move on to chapter 6 once I've posted all of these. So I hope that you have found these very helpful, and I've really enjoyed sharing all this with you. And until next time, please take care of yourself. Please take care of those around you. I love you all very much. Again, I love doing this for you. It was no problem at all for me to add these in. I feel a lot better about that. Anyways, until next time, as always, take care of yourself. Take care of those around you. Stay in gratitude. Stay safe. Stay in a place of love and in grace. And I will see you all again soon for our next video. Take care until then. Bye-bye.